Incredible rescue, revealed how courageous heroes saved a mother white tiger from a giant python. The sun began to sink behind the rolling hills of Tennessee, casting a warm orange glow over Jake's struggling animal sanctuary. From that vantage, the sanctuary looked somewhat magical, a patchwork of greens and browns, with the silhouettes of animals darting through the trees. But, unbeknownst to most, this was just a fragile facade. The weight of the world rested heavy on Jake's shoulders. At 35, he felt every day of the battle to keep those gates open, a burden handed down through generations. It wasn't just a sanctuary, it was a legacy, one that came under threat the day a giant python slithered into the enclosure, its scales glistening menacingly in the fading light. The python, an imposing creature, made its way toward Snow, the breathtaking mother white tiger whose beauty could take your breath away. That tiger represented everything Jake loved: hope, family, and the dream his father had fought so hard to build. Now, as neighbors murmured and worry climbed, Jake's heart raced, the stakes never higher. A chill ran down his spine at the thought of losing her. When the news broke out, the community split into factions. Some rallied to rescue the tiger, seeing Snow as a symbol of their childhood, while others deemed the effort a waste of precious resources, a misguided endeavor thwarting more pressing needs. It stung. Those same voices had once sung praises of the sanctuary, now reduced to taunts. Amidst the chaos, Jake's estranged brother, Mark, returned to town, his skepticism wrenching open old wounds that Jake had long buried. As voices grew louder, Jake gathered a few loyal friends: Maya, a spirited local teacher, and Tom, a burly mechanic with a heart of gold. They banded together, sharing stories of their own struggles throughout the years, slowly peeling back the layers of resentment and sacrifice that had grown between them. Jake felt the tension of unspoken feelings rise like steam, their shared pain thickening the air. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a mix of hope and dread, they prepared for what lay ahead, the python lurking like a specter just beyond the fence. As they approached the enclosure, they were met with the mesmerizing sight of Snow, her powerful form silhouetted against the colorful sky. The python coiled around her, a dark shadow against her pristine white fur. Jake's heart pounded against his ribcage. Could they save her? The very idea brought tears to his eyes, but then came an unexpected revelation. As Jake shouted to the group to hold back, he noticed the python's eyes soft, scared, and almost human. A wounded creature trying to survive. Everything he believed, family, loyalty, and love, swirled chaotically within him. What would he sacrifice now? Would the answer cost him not just a tiger's life but the fragile bonds of his community? As tension soared to an unbearable height, the community stood, eyes wide with anticipation. Old grudges began to soften, and just when Jake thought he'd lost everything, a flicker of understanding ignited in their hearts. Would they save both a mother tiger and the broken pieces of their shared past, or was the cost too great? With his heart racing, Jake stood at a crossroads, the future of everything he loved hanging in the balance. The air thickened with tension as Jake stood frozen, his mind racing. The python tightened its grip around Snow, who let out a frustrated growl, a sound that echoed in the hearts of those gathered. Fear radiated from the onlookers, their eyes darted between the animals and each other, grappling with the weight of the moment. Jake. Maya's voice broke through the thick fog of uncertainty. We need a plan. Just shouting isn't going to help her. He nodded, but the clarity of action eluded him. What was he supposed to do? His thoughts swirled around as if the answer was just beyond his reach. Look, Tom offered, stepping forward. That python might see Snow as a threat. If we could distract it, maybe we can draw it away. Distract it? Mark sneered from the sidelines. You think flailing your arms is going to get that beast to back off? You're insane. Jake turned to glare at Mark. He didn't need doubters right now. What do you suggest, Mark? Maybe we should just stand here and do nothing? Mark's silence was deafening, yet Jake felt a flicker of understanding in his chest. Deep down, he wanted to reach out, to mend the rift between them, but frustration clouded his judgment. Suddenly, Maya took off her jacket and waved it in the air. I'm going to try, she said, her voice steady despite the stakes. If I can get it to focus on me, wait. Jake called, his instincts screaming against the reckless move. But Maya was already sprinting toward the fence, her heart steeled with determination. Watching her approach, the python sent a surge of dread crashing down over him. Maya, don't. He yelled, but the words were lost on the wind. With bold courage, Maya leaped and swung the jacket in the air, drawing the giant snake's attention. At first, it recoiled, flicking its tongue in confusion, but then, as if sensing the challenge, it released Snow and flicked its massive body toward Maya. Jake's heart raced as panic ripped through the crowd. No! Get back! He shouted, but another voice joined him, an older man from the village who once had lived alongside Jake's father. Back away, everyone! We don't want to crowd it. As the tension mounted, Jake felt the familiar weight of history pressing down on him. The voices of division echoed in his mind, yet in the midst of this crisis, there was a heartbeat of unity. They were all rallying to save Snow. Despite their differences, Maya was pulling the python's focus, darting to the left and then right, forcing it to shift. Jake took a deep breath, feeling a spark igniting in him. Maybe this was what was needed to rebuild their community. Tom, help me! He shouted, determination flooding his veins. They grabbed the loose objects around them, sticks, stones, anything they could find to divert the giant snake further from Snow and Maya. They began shouting, yelling and throwing debris near the python, all while keeping an eye on both the massive creature and their brave friend. Through the chaos, Snow let out a fierce roar that transformed into a comforting purr as she finally scrambled away from danger. Jake's heart soared. They were doing it. But would they be enough to protect Maya while uniting the community? As the python turned, a fierce hunger in its eyes, he realized they weren't just fighting for Snow anymore but for something larger, a chance to heal old wounds and forge new bonds. With renewed vigor, Jake sprinted forward. Together! He yelled. We fight together. In that pivotal moment, something shifted in the crowd. One by one, they took a step forward, bound not only by fear but by a shared hope. But just as they found their rhythm, the python struck fast, lunging toward them once more, leaving Jake breathless at the closeness of disaster. Could they truly save both Snow and Maya, or would division claim them one final time? Jake felt the world around him draw tight, the air sharp like a blade at his throat. They had acted, they had united, but when the python lunged, everything crystallized into sheer terror. He watched as it shot forward, its muscles rippling, preparing to ensnare Maya like it had done with Snow. Throw something! He shouted, adrenaline coursing through him like fire. His words ignited more movement. Tom picked up a heavy stick and hurled it with all his might, hitting the python squarely on its head. The snake paused, confusion flashing in its beady eyes. Jake seized the moment, racing forward, his heart pounding louder than the chaos surrounding him. Maya! Move right! Jake yelled, his voice cutting through the frenzy. She didn't hesitate, pivoting just as the python's head swung toward her, its tongue flicking out, tasting the air. Mark, for once, had pushed aside his skepticism. He grabbed a rock and joined in the fray, hurling it at the beast. Over here, you big stupid snake, he shouted, shocking himself with his own daring. It was the spark they needed. More people started to join the fight, throwing anything they could find, a bottle, a piece of wood, even a plastic chair. Jake felt a swell of hope. They were becoming a force together, each act of bravery driving them closer. The python hesitated, and for a fraught moment, it seemed they might just turn the tide. Maya darted left, adrenaline surging through her. She waved her arms, taunting the snake, drawing it away from Jake and the crowd. But then the python refocused, its gaze sharp and predatory. It coiled, preparing for another strike. Jake could see the tension, the spring of its muscles. Time slowed down. He couldn't let this be the end. It couldn't end like this. Snow, get back! He shouted. She had been inches away, lingering on the periphery, unsure of what to do. But as soon as he called her name, the white tiger understood. With a low growl, she leaped, taking a position beside Maya, a fierce guardian of her own. Stay close. Maya encouraged, her voice barely above a whisper. Tom, grab her collar! Jake yelled, sprinting towards them. The python lunged again at Maya, but just as it did, he lunged too, pushing her out of reach. The python struck hard, but Jake managed to swipe it away with a nearby branch, knocking it to the ground. The crowd erupted into a collective gasp, but the moment of shock gave way to action. They shouted for Snow and Maya, urging them to retreat further while Jake squared his shoulders, ready to confront the creature head-on if necessary. And then, just behind him, he heard the unmistakable clattering of something large and metallic. A moment later, he caught sight of the old man from the village, dragging a metal gate from the old barn, wheeling it towards them. Open it! Open it now! The man yelled, his voice thick with urgency. Jake's heart raced as he made the connection. If they could corral the python, they could trap it before anyone got seriously hurt. Everyone, help! He called. The crowd rallied, each person pouring every ounce of energy they could muster into securing the gate. The python regained its footing, hissing deeply, rattling everyone's nerves, but they had a chance. If they were quick enough. If they worked together. The tension in the air was electric as they prepared for one last push. Could they really close in on their greatest threat and save their friends? As they swung the gate wide, fear mixed with an undeniable hope ignited a sense of purpose in Jake. He wouldn't let them down. He couldn't. But just then, perfect calamity struck. The python lunged one last time, a swift blur of muscle and hunger heading straight for Snow, and Jake's heart plummeted. Would they be able to save both Snow and Maya before it was too late? Or was this unity nothing more than a fleeting illusion in the face of danger? Jake's heart pounded in his chest as the python shot forward, its scales gleaming menacingly in the fading light. Every instinct screamed at him to do something, anything, to protect Snow and Maya. Maya, hold on! He shouted, rushing toward the chaos. The world narrowed to just him and the snake, its jaws opening wide, a dark cavern of fangs poised to strike. The metallic gate loomed behind him, a potential lifeline, but they needed more time. For an instant, time stretched. The crowd's shouts merged into a distant hum, their fear a tangible weight in the air. Jake reached out, determined to intercept, to be a shield for those he cared about. Tom, get the gate ready. We have to trap it. I'm on it. Tom's voice echoed with urgency, as he wrestled with the heavy frame, adrenaline surging like a river through the gathered souls. But the python didn't hesitate. It was fast, too fast. In one fluid motion, it pivoted, redirecting its assault towards Snow, who remained protectively on Maya's side. The white tiger stood her ground, fur bristling, teeth bared. Don't! Jake yelled, an anguished cry born of desperate love. He couldn't picture a scenario where anything other than victory came from this moment. In its wild frenzy, the python miscalculated. It lunged, finally aiming for Maya, hoping to take down her guardian and consume the future it represented. But Snow was faster. Without warning, she sprang forward, body a blur of white and orange, attempting to fend off the serpent with fierce growls. A roar echoed, reverberating off the trees. Keep moving! Maya urged Jake, her eyes locked on the python, the determination in her voice sharpening like the edge of a blade. They couldn't let this creature have its way. Not now. Not after everything they had fought for. The gate drew closer. With a collective war cry, they surged toward it. Gathered momentum washed over the group, a tangible entity lifting their spirits. Tom coordinated the distraction. Now! He shouted as they shifted around the metal barricade, ready to reclaim control over their safety. The python whipped its head, snapping at Snow's paws, but she danced out of reach, perfectly poised to protect. Jake felt a swell of admiration. She was more than a wild animal, she was their protector, their emblem of bravery. Close it. Close it. Maya cried, urgency tightening her tone as the snake recoiled, its head darting, searching for weaknesses. In an instant, they dove in, pushing the gate with all their might. The python twisted, but it was too late. They jammed the gate against its sleek body, trapping the beast just long enough to ensure safety. It writhed and hissed, angered by the sudden confinement. Heartbeats echoed in Jake's ears, the quiet filling the gaps where fear had resided. They had done it. Relief washed over him like a wave, yet Jake remained acutely aware of the python's power and fury behind the gate. They needed to do more than trap it, they had to ensure no one would ever have to face this danger again. Is it safe? Snow growled protectively, leaning towards Maya, her golden eyes flickering with concern. It will be, Maya panted, determination igniting in her voice, we just have to figure out what to do next. The crowd fell silent, catching their breath, eyes on Jake and Maya, hope mingling with fear. But as Jake looked into the eyes of his friends, an uneasy thought gripped him. They couldn't just leave the python sealed away, they had to find a way to ensure it wouldn't return. They needed a plan to keep everyone safe, but he feared what that plan entailed. What do we do now? He murmured, looking at each determined face surrounding him. In that moment of fragile hope, Jake understood the challenge lay not just in containing the threat but in confronting it once and for all. With a fierce resolve swirling in his chest, he realized there was a new direction, a path forward. But it would require courage and sacrifice. As the night wrapped them in darkness, the answer loomed just out of reach, leaving an echoing question hanging in the air: would they dare to face the python one last time? Would they take the risk to ensure everyone's safety? The tension hung heavy in the air as Jake absorbed the gravity of their situation. His heart raced again, but this time it wasn't just from adrenaline, it was fear. Fear of the unknown, of the plan that loomed over them like a storm cloud. Maya, he started, his voice barely a whisper, what if we face it? What if we go in after it? The words hung in the air, hovering between bravado and insanity. Jake saw the flicker of uncertainty pass through Maya's eyes. She swallowed hard, the tiny glint of hope battling the shadows of doubt. I don't know, Jake. What if it gets loose? What if Snow's low growl interrupted them, a deep, rumbling warning that echoed their fears? The python was not just a trapped creature, it was a cornered predator, and in its fury, anything could happen. It can't be left like this. Jake's determination surged, his thoughts racing. We can't just leave it. If we do, it'll go after others. We have to find a way to make sure it's never a threat again. The crowd around them shifted, murmurs of concern blooming like wildflowers in a storm. He could feel the eyes of friends and even strangers weighing the enormity of the decision. They were together, but they were divided. Some wanted safety at all costs, others craved action. Let us create a plan, Tom spoke up, his posture squared, a fire igniting in his chest. If we can lure it away from the gate, we have a chance to get it into the enclosure near the lake. It'll be harder for it to escape from there. Or we could face it directly, a voice chimed in. Jake recognized it as Rachel's, another one of their closest friends. We need to make sure it doesn't have the upper hand. Enough of this. Maya interjected, her voice shaking with intensity. Do we really want to risk everything? We have to think first. Jake watched the fire in her eyes, the same fire he had seen in Snow when she defended Maya. It was in moments like these that they needed each other the most. He was reminded of why they even fought. It wasn't just for survival, but for each other. Time, Jake suddenly said. We don't have much time before it gets angry enough to break free. If we're going to do this, we need to decide now. Silence fell over their little group as they weighed the risks. He could hear distant murmurs from the crowd, their breath held tight in anticipation. Okay, Maya finally said, her voice steady despite the uncertainty still lurking there. Let us lure it into the enclosure. But we have to be careful. If things go south, we stay close to the gate. Everyone nodded, an unspoken agreement binding them. They were in this together. A plan formed rapidly, fueled by adrenaline and necessity. Tom would gather some heavy branches to help block the snake's path, while Jake and Maya prepared bait, anything they could use to distract it. Snow would stay vigilant, ready to step in if the situation escalated. With each passing moment, Jake felt a mix of excitement and dread intertwine within him. His heart raced, but this time there was purpose in the chaos. They were stepping up to the challenge, facing down fear and refusing to back down. As they readied themselves, Jake glanced back at the crowd. They looked worried, but he could see flickers of hope. He wanted them to believe, to know that they were not just fighting against the serpent. They were fighting for each other. "Let us do this," he said, voice barely above a whisper as he locked eyes with Maya and Snow. With one last deep breath, they stepped forward into the unknown, prepared to confront what lay ahead. In a heartbeat, the air shifted, first a crackle of electricity followed by the slithering sounds from the python. The confrontation was inevitable, but Jake felt a fire of courage within himself for the first time. Would they emerge victorious, or would they pay the ultimate price for their bravery? Only time would tell. The ground felt alive beneath Jake's feet. Every step forward tightened the knot in his stomach, a mix of fear and adrenaline thrumming through him. Maya was by his side, her gaze unwavering despite the tension. He could hear Snow growl softly at the end of the line, a reminder of the peril they were tiptoeing into. "Stay close," he murmured to her, though he knew the initiative was his. The crowd behind them fell silent as they crossed the threshold into the darker part of the enclosure. Tall grass swayed like shadows, whispering secrets of what lurked just ahead. Tom had gone ahead, waving a thick branch, scanning the path for any sign of the python. Each rustle in the brush sent shivers through Jacob's spine. The air was thick with anticipation, a wild energy that sparked in the cool evening. He could see the edge of the lake glistening in the distance, the small enclosure waiting to contain their foe. Maya's hand brushed against his, a fleeting reassurance that sent warmth surging through him. He turned to her, sensing they were on the brink of something life-changing. "We can do this," he said, more to convince himself than her. A loud crash split the night, branches snapping like twigs. They froze in place. The crowd behind them gasped, and for a moment, panic rose like smoke. "That's definitely not a rabbit," Rachel quipped nervously, her attempt at humor barely masking her fear. They pressed further, making their way towards the noise. The light from their flashlights flickered upon something unmistakable, the scaled body of the python, coiled tightly around a heavy branch. Its muscles rippled under the moonlight, a mesmerizing yet terrifying sight. Jake's breath hitched. It was larger than he'd imagined, each curve a reminder of the raw power it held. "Now," Jake whispered, adrenaline flooding his system. They needed to stick to the plan. He motioned to Tom to position the branches as a barrier, anything to redirect the snake's path. Maya stood beside him, gripping a makeshift lure tightly, her determination catching in her throat. The bait was a piece of meat they managed to scrounge up, its scent hanging thick in the air, a tempting offer to draw the python's attention away from them. Then came the most extraordinary sound, a low hiss that curled like smoke through the trees. The python's eyes glinted with an otherworldly intelligence, and suddenly, everything felt surreal. Jake caught the gaze of the crowd once more, their faces reflected a mix of horror and fascination. "Jake." Maya's voice trembled. She was gripping his arm tightly now, her nails digging in. He could feel her heart racing with the same urgency he had. What if it doesn't take the bait? They were running out of time. With a deep breath, Jake prepared to make a quick decision. "We drive it toward the lake," he said, glancing at Tom. "We need to be swift and focused." Jake stepped forward, waving the meat like a flag, his heart thrumming with every footfall. The python's head turned sharply, curiosity piqued. "Now!" Jake shouted, and in one fluid motion, they all advanced in unison. But as they moved, the unexpected happened. A branch snapped beneath Tom's foot, and the python recoiled. In a swift motion, it lunged, its massive body propelling through the air toward them. "Run!" Maya screamed, but before Jake could process the words, she was already darting back, Snow close at her heels. The world spun, moments collapsing into chaos. Jake's mind raced, his feet instinctively carrying him backward, but his eyes remained locked on the snake, determined, fierce, a titan of nature, now unleashed and angry. Would they guide it safely away, or would they fall victim to the danger they faced? The night's shadows cloaked their ultimate fate, leaving only one question burning in Jake's mind: did they dare to fight this monster, or was retreat the only choice? Jake's heart pounded in his chest as he stumbled back, the ground shifting beneath his feet. The python's eyes glimmered in the darkness, instinctively calculating its prey. He forced his gaze away, focused on Maya. Her face was a mixture of fear and fierce determination, and that ignited something in him. "Get back!" he yelled, trying to sound braver than he felt. He needed to protect her, to keep them all safe. The python's tongue flicked out, tasting the air, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. Everything around them faded, the distant murmur of the crowd, the rustling of the trees. It was just Jake, Maya, and the serpent. "Watch out!" Maya cried, pointing toward the python, which was now on the move, its thick body undulating effortlessly across the ground. Tom had already turned tail, sprinting toward the safety of the clearing. Jake felt his pulse quicken. They couldn't afford to lose any momentum. "Maya, we have to go." He grabbed her hand, strong and warm in his, and yanked her toward the trees. But her feet were rooted to the spot, eyes wide and transfixed. "Maya, please." He tugged again, desperation flowing through him. "We're not losing anyone tonight." Finally, she broke her gaze from the python and nodded, sprinting behind him as they fled deeper into the dark woods. Branches snagged their clothes, but they pressed on, fueled by pure adrenaline. Behind them, the hiss of the python echoed like a threat, but it was the chill that rippled across Jake's skin, a reminder of what was lurking just beyond their sight. They needed to regroup, to turn the tables. "We have to lure it away," Maya urged as they dodged low-hanging branches. "There's no way it'll follow us into the clearing." Jake nodded, his mind whirling with possibilities. "We can use the meat again. If we spread it out, it might give us a chance to encircle it and trap it." He could almost feel the courage returning, each thought pushing back fear. They dove behind a large tree, catching their breath. From their refuge, they could hear Tom's voice giving orders to the crowd, tense, yet somehow comforting amidst the chaos. "Let us spread the bait on the other side of that clearing," Jake whispered. "We'll create a line, maybe lead it away from the entrance we need to use." Maya was already nodding, her jaw set. "Let us do it." They moved stealthily, glancing back to where the others were gathering. "Tom!" Jake shouted, waving him over, relief washing over Jake when he saw Tom sprinting toward them. "We need the meat spread out, fast. We'll lead it toward the lake." Tom's expression flickered with both fear and excitement as he nodded. "Got it. Let us make it work." The trio worked quickly, the adrenaline surging through them, staving off the panic that wanted to settle in. They scattered the bait far enough from their hiding spot, creating a winding path toward the water. Suddenly, a loud thud followed by a rustle drew their attention. The python had changed course. "Now!" Jake shouted, leading Maya and Tom back toward their vantage point. They crouched low, hearts racing as the massive creature swept past, its attention completely consumed by the meat. Jake felt a surge of hope mixed with dread. They were so close, yet so far. As the python recoiled to feed, an unmistakable roar erupted from the far side of the enclosure, a sound that made Jake freeze in disbelief. It was the unmistakable call of a mother tiger. Could she be in danger too? "Jake." Maya's voice trembled but held a sense of urgency. "We have to get to her. What if the python doesn't stop at the bait?" His mind raced again, torn between two urgent rescues now. They had a chance to save a tiger from a python, but what if it all went wrong? The path split before them, and Jake's heart shrank. Do we stick to the plan or try to save the tiger? Time was slipping away fast. The initial pang of fear was morphing into a terrifying resolve. We can't let it end here. Not like this. Would they risk everything to save both creatures or focus on one? As the decisions loomed heavy between them, Jake realized this was no longer just a fight. It was a quest for balance in the wild. But could they succeed before the darkness closed in around them? Jake's heart raced as he met Maya's worried gaze, the weight of their choices pressing painfully against his chest. He knew their priority had to be clear, but with the instinct to protect firing through him, he grappled with the gnawing uncertainty. "We split up," he finally said, the words escaping his lips before he could second-guess them. "I'll go after the tiger. You and Tom keep an eye on the python. If it breaks away, you need to lead it toward the lake, where it's more open." "No." Maya's voice was sharp, panic threading through it. "What if listen? You know I can't let it attack her," he insisted, trying to summon a steely determination. "I'll make sure the tiger is safe. Just stay focused on what we planned." The moment hung thick around them. Her eyes, usually filled with so much fire, showed the battle between fear and trust. Finally, she nodded, albeit reluctantly. Tom's quiet agreement felt like a weight on his shoulders, promising the duo would look out for one another. With their fates set, Jake turned and dashed away, the trees blurring by as adrenaline surged through him. Every crack of a branch underfoot ignited visions of danger. Would he arrive in time? He pushed thoughts of the python from his mind, focusing instead on the plaintive roar of the mother tiger that pierced through the quiet night air. It was a haunting sound, and it drove him forward. As he emerged into a more open area, anxiety morphed into determination. Suddenly, the tiger came into view. She was pacing, fur bristling against the chill, a raw energy humming in her every move. But her eyes filled with instinctive fear saw Jake, and her posture shifted. "Easy girl," Jake murmured, inching closer, being careful to maintain a non-threatening stance. The last thing he wanted to do was startle her more. "I'm here to help. There's a python nearby, and we need to get you to safety." But the tiger's expression softened only slightly, she clearly sensed something was amiss. Her instincts were alarming her about the hidden threat. With a low growl, she seemed to glance at the shadows, her body taut, ready to spring. At that moment, the distant sound of a commotion echoed through the trees. Jake's heart sank. It sounded like the python had moved again, stirring up chaos as it resumed its hunt. "Maya! Tom!" he shouted, though the murmur of the wind swallowed his voice. A figure suddenly leapt from the underbrush. It was Tom, his face strained but determined. "Jake! Come on! The python has changed direction. We need you back." The tiger's bristling fur spoke volumes. Danger was building like a storm even as Jake's mind raced. "I can't leave her," he cried, torn between the needs of the tiger and the reality of the python threatening them all. Tom stepped closer, panic evident in his eyes. "You have to find a way to lead her away. If the python gets to her." His voice trailed off, the implications hanging heavy between them. Jake swallowed hard, his heart heavy with resolve. "All right. I'll signal her, but we need to go fast." He quickly examined the surroundings, and with a burst of courage, he raised his arms, calling softly to the tiger, swaying slightly to show he meant no harm. "Come on, girl. You can trust me." In that flicker of time, the tiger took a tentative step forward, but her instinct was a barrier, her body poised between flight and trust. As the air grew thick with tension, the ground shook subtly beneath them, the python advancing again, the echoes of danger intensifying in the dark woods. "Now or never," Jake murmured, anchoring his gaze on the magnificent creature before him. Would he be able to save them both, or would fear pull them apart? He took a breath, ready to make his move, heart pounding in expectation. Would he lead the tiger to safety before it was too late? Time was running out, and the choices were more than just about survival. They were a test of their courage in a world that felt both wild and unforgiving. Would they find the bravery they needed? Jake's heart thundered as he stared at the tiger, her amber eyes locked on him, shimmering with both fear and curiosity. The world around them melted away, and for a moment, it felt like they were the only two beings in the forest. The distant sounds of chaos faded into a haunting silence. "Trust me," he whispered, his voice barely breaking through the tension, but he felt that it was more to convince himself. With careful steps, he took a few paces back, inviting her to follow. The moment felt surreal, like a dance between predator and protector. The tiger hesitated, muscles coiled, sensing the threat that lurked close by. Jake cast a quick glance back at Tom, who remained on alert, scanning the shadows. "We need to go," Tom urged, panic etched across his face. He really was trapped between two worlds, the instinct to flee the chaos and the animal that needed him. Drawing a deep breath, Jake focused on the tiger. He couldn't let fear push them apart. He took one more step back, revealing more of the path ahead. "This way. Come on," he pleaded, waving his arm gently, willing her to follow. But then there was a sudden crack, a heavy sound like thunder, and the foliage rustled ominously. Jake's stomach dropped. That was it. The python was nearing. "Jake." Tom's voice sliced through the air, urging him to act fast. "It's coming." Jake's pulse quickened. His mind raced. He couldn't ignore the danger any longer. The python was bigger and faster, a predator ready to ambush. He needed to make a decision. "Stay here," he instructed the tiger softly, then shifted his focus, crouching low to the ground and shouting louder than before, "Hey, over here." The trick was to distract the snake. To get it moving in the opposite direction. From the corner of his eye, he noticed the tiger glance back, still wary but intrigued by his unwavering presence. Hope began to flicker in his chest. Maybe, just maybe. "Come on," he shouted into the dark, focusing on the shadows just beyond him where the python might emerge. He needed to channel all his energy into guiding the tiger, rallying every ounce of courage he could. The tiger took a small step forward, almost imperceptible, but Jake felt it, like a shift in the air. "That's it, girl," he breathed. "I'm here." But as if answering his call, the brush cracked again, and the massive form of the python surged into view, its scales shimmering under the pale light of the moon, threatening and beautiful. Jake's heart sank. The moment of truth seemed to come crashing down. "Run!" he shouted, panic rising like bile in his throat. Time slowed as he watched the serpent swell, muscles rippling, its tongue flicking in and out. The tiger froze for a fraction, a heartbeat. And then, with a primal roar, she dashed to the side, muscles in her body exploding with raw power. Jake sprinted after her, adrenaline flooding his veins. He dared to glance back. The python was in motion, pursuing an easier target, the tiger. "No!" he shouted, his heart pounding in desperation as he raced to close the distance. "Tom!" he gasped, urging Tom to follow. "We have to get in front. If the tiger is cornered, he couldn't let that happen." They surged through the brush, breaths coming heavy and fast, the world folding around them like some twisted game of survival. The thudding of paws echoed in tandem with their steps, forming a bizarre rhythm of fear and resolve. Jake could feel the urgency, the weight of what hung in the balance. If they didn't intercept the tiger and guide her safely, all hope would fade. Breathless, he shouted again, "Over here." His voice straining against the relentless chaos, willing her to trust him just enough. But as they broke into a small clearing, the gravity of the moment slammed into him. The tiger was ahead, and the python was closing in. Would their combined courage be enough to stave off the inevitable? As Jake caught the tiger's eye once more, could he convince her to make that final leap for safety, or would they all fall into the jaws of fate? He steadied himself, heart racing, knowing that in this moment, everything depended on trust, and time was slipping away. Would they evade the strike? Jake felt the tension crackling in the air as he darted forward, desperation coursing through him. Time had all but run out. The white tiger's powerful form was caught in his periphery, her grace and ferocity evident as she faced off against the advancing python. But the weight of the moment got heavier with each passing heartbeat, pulling him down like a boulder. "Stay close, Snow!" he shouted, his voice hoarse with urgency. The python rippled and shifted, its eyes fixed hungrily on the majestic creature before it. In that instant, Jake's mind exploded with possibilities. He recalled a trick his father once told him about animals: they're instinctive, reactive. If he could just snap the tiger's focus away from the intimidating threat long enough, Maybe they could turn the tide. Maya. Tom. He cried, rallying the others from the sidelines. Get ready to help her. Maya, her spirit unwavering despite the creeping fear, nodded. She glanced at Tom, who looked as solid as a rock, ready to fight. Together, they formed a protective barrier, shifting closer around Snow, armed with any makeshift weapons they could find. A stick here, a heavy rock there. Just like we practiced. She yelled with determination still lighting her eyes. With that, Jake took a deep breath, shaking off the suffocating fear. He had to act decisively. He raised his voice, a commanding shout that cut through the night like a flare. Over here. You ugly snake. The python paused for just a moment, its head swiveling in his direction. Now. Jake shouted, as the crowd surged forward, shouting alongside him. Bait it. Tom threw a hefty branch toward the python, directly in Jake's line of sight. The snake twisted, rattled, and lunged toward the distraction, its scales glistening with a menacing fervor. Go, Snow. Now. Jake urged. The white tiger, sensing the shift, lunged away from danger, eyes darting back towards Jake. He felt a rush of joy as she raced past him, her long strides carrying her into the safety of the clearing. Before he could let himself feel relieved, he turned, only to meet the unforgiving gaze of the python barreling toward him and his friends. Tom charged forward, big and bold. I'll hold it off. He yelled, using both strength and courage to hold the snake's attention. Jake's heart thundered as he stepped closer to the snake, following Tom's lead. You're not getting anyone today. He shouted, throwing dust and small rocks in its direction, adrenaline flooding through him. The creature twisted, caught in a moment of confusion, and instead of striking, propelled itself wildly. The crowd erupted into cries of encouragement, energy pulsating all around. You got it, Jake. Keep pushing. Maya shouted, her voice ringing like a battle cry. Together. Hold it. Jake yelled back, pulling everyone into a unified effort. Just a bit further. It was all or nothing now. Snow was safe, and now they had to finish it. Driven by camaraderie, they pressed on, creating a chaotic flurry of movement around the python. But it was powerful, instincts roaring back as it adapted to the distraction, slithering with intent. Over there a gap. Maya pointed towards the corner of the clearing, where they could corral the serpent. In that moment, hope surged anew. Without hesitation, the gathered villagers followed Jake's rallying cry, pushing toward the opening. They worked together, filling that slit with determination, allowing a plan to take form. Let us trap it. Tom's voice boomed. Move. Jake felt the wild rhythm of collective effort flow through him, the pulse of the community forming a bond that had, ironically, been forged in rising conflict moments before. They were all on the same team, fighting for their shared purpose, for family, for legacy, for the very spirit of the sanctuary. Push! Jake yelled as the python shifted closer to the edge. Fascination and terror mingled in the crowd as they joined in one last push, adrenaline carrying them past fear. They needed to pin it down. It surged, a fierce creature thrashing, but together they used the heavy wooden gates, blocking its path with every ounce of strength they could muster. In grand unison, they urged the python toward the snares, directing it with fierce cries. With a powerful final thrust, they edged the massive creature into the gap they decreated. It twisted angrily, but the momentum worked, and they slammed the gate shut, containing the serpent at last. A piercing roar echoed into the air, reverberating through the trees, a sound of triumph mixed with fear. Every eye turned to their small band of heroes, realization dawning they had pulled together against the odds, against their past grievances, to forge a common future. The heaviness in Jake's heart lifted, replaced by an electrifying sense of hope. Maya moved to Jake's side, tears glistening with relief. We did it, she whispered, catching her breath, and he could see the joy and courage thrumming beneath the surface of her fear. Mark stepped forward, his skeptical nature softening. Jake, I have to say, I never thought we'd pull through like that. I'm sorry for doubting you. Jake nodded, feeling warmth build within. We're family. no more divides. Snow approached them cautiously, golden eyes sparkling with gratitude. With a relieved sigh, Jake fell to his knees, arms open wide as the tiger's trust enveloped him in an embrace he longed for. The community behind them, their faces illuminated by the memory of what they had just accomplished, forged an unspoken pact, vowing to protect what mattered most. They had saved both the tiger and themselves, a realization swelling into something immeasurable. In that moment, everything was raw and beautiful, an unanticipated rebirth of shared purpose emanating back into the sanctuary they all held dear. As the sun began to rise on a new day, the python contained safely away, Jake understood that they had not only conquered an external threat but had also woven the threads of their fragmented community back together again. This was a beginning, not an end, a revival of hope. In that glorious dawn, Jake knew what it meant to truly protect what you love. Kaleidoscopic colors filled the sky, mirroring the transformation of their hearts, illuminating paths forward that were only just beginning. With minds linking up in the hum of hope and transformation, the sanctuary was safe again. "Let us celebrate!" someone shouted, and as the crowd erupted into cheers, Jake felt his heart swell, radiance igniting anew. And if you felt that same weight of inspiration stirring within, the time is now. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel because you don't want to miss the next exclusive stories that could light the way for you too. Leave a like right this moment to feed the algorithm. The strength of our community grows with every click. Tell us in the comments how this story made you feel and where you are watching from, because your voice matters. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who are searching for the kind of transformation that ignites hope. Together, let us spread this undeniable message and keep the spirit alive.